my mic on? Hello. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Thank you all for coming. I know that this is lunchtime. Like, I'm aware of that, which is even more reason. Thank you so much for coming. So speaking of lunchtime, I'm hungry. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm hungry. So have you ever been in this situation where, like you're meeting up with some friends, you haven't seen them for a while, and then you wanna, especially you're hungry, and like you wanna, you heard about this cafe, that's great cafe, on the side of the town, so you go there, your friends are already like sitting there like with their sandwiches that just look so good, right? And so you're standing in line, you know what you wanna get, because they already told you that the sandwich is really good. So you get the sandwich, you go to the counter, you're about to pay, and they're cash only, right? You only have credit card. So what do? I mean, like, you were just standing there dejected, and then your friends is like eating that awesome sandwich. My name is Raymond Arifianto, and contrary to the belief, I'm not going to be talking about sandwich for the rest of my presentation. I am an engineering lead from Lionhead Studios, but you probably know me from my gamer tag more. My Xbox Live gamer tag is Chuck Norris. I swear. So add me in Xbox Live if you guys want to play together. And so today I'm going to be talking about Fable Legends. And before we get to that point, you're probably wondering what the hell is going on with that cape. Stick around until the end of the presentation. I will tell you what's going on with the cape. There is a reason for the cape. All right, so in Lionhead, I'm responsible for the cross-device aspect of Fable Legends. Fable Legends is something that we're very proud of. It's something that Lionhead has been working on for a couple of years. We're truly psyched about it. It's going to be the first true cross-device game enabled in this generation between Xbox One and Windows 10 PCs. So what does that mean? We will explore what does that mean and the expectation on what that sentence really means and how you go about and doing it, starting from enrolling and so on and so forth, all the considerations about it. We're going to be talking about it. We're gonna know a lot more about how we achieve cross-device gameplay in Fable Legends in this 1 hour, if you stick around with me. All right, but here's the question for you. What is Fable Legends? So for newcomers, let's go on into what is Fable Legends.
Let me tell you a story of heroes. Of 4 that came, 4 that fell. And of the heroes that took their place. Bravely they fought, the future of Albion in their hands. Could it be that these heroes will triumph? Could it be they will vanquish all? Let me tell you the story of the villain. Of how 4 heroes came. And 4 heroes were conquered. Save Albion now.
Right. So that was kind of like a tease that we captured a few months ago. And I mean, like, graphically, it has improved quite a lot, the game. But we're not here to talk about graphics. We're here to talk about the cross-device gameplay aspect of it, which includes multiplayer, which includes all kinds of things that gamers would expect. The reason I chose that trailer is just because it captures the essence of Fable Legends that we will talk about. It captures about there's the concept of you're in the town and you're grouping up with your friends, and then you have a quest, and then you have the 4 versus 1 asymmetrical multiplayer, and so on and so forth, which, again, like we will discuss that. So number one question that we have is, why do we even consider cross-device gameplay for Fable Legends? So the story goes back to Gamescom, and in Gamescom we already knew that we're going to be doing cross-device, but we couldn't make the announcement because we want to time it well with the Windows 10 announcements. And at the time, like, it was we set up our Xboxes, and then the line. People start lining up to play our game, which is just really humbling for game developers because it means that, yeah, people want to play our game, which is awesome. And people line up for like 3 hours, right? So they play it, they're having a good time. Some of them is like gamepad, it's like gamepad. And for me, my discovery is just the fact that Germany is a PC gaming centric, right? And number one question that we keep on getting is like, hey, this game is actually pretty cool. Like, I actually played it and I had fun. Can I play it in my PC, right? So it's kind of like analogous to my sandwich story. It's just the fact that like the content is there, but like there is a friction of people enjoying it. So for us, a good cross-device gameplay, it just basically means that you take a lot of headache out of gamers to enjoy your content, to enjoy your game. More people to enjoy more people playing our game means that the more people can get hooked to our game, and the more people hooked to our game is just, in general, is awesome because that's what game developers want. So reduce friction is number one. If you see from that trailer, the core of the game is, like I said, 4 versus 1 asymmetrical multiplayer. So multiplayer has to work, has to just work. What does that mean? We will discover it. Also, there's a question about, okay, so you have PC and you have Xbox. Why don't you just do it the way it has always been done, which is PC have their own pool of people and Xbox has their own pool of people? What's wrong with that? One thing that we learned from our closed beta, which we have been doing for a couple of months, is the fact that no two games, assuming that you're not playing against AI, no two games are alike, because one villain, controls, assuming that I'm playing as a hero, one villain will control his creatures in some ways, and then the other villains will put more emphasis on traps, for instance, or more on the flow. So it's very different feel, organic feel. And if I'm from the villain perspective, you have a combination of heroes, and how they play together also is very organic feel. So what I'm trying to say is the fact that like we feel that people get enriched in their experience playing our game with multiplayer and with bigger pool of people. All right, so I'm going to just quickly go through this because I feel that I need to kind of introduce the concept. In Fable Legends, when you start the game, you will go into our social hub. That is basically, you see the villagers, you do your, like if you play the previous Fable games, you probably are more familiar with like a whole Bower Stone thing where you see villagers, you flirt with them, you pump your chest, and maybe you'll be able to see your friends also. Hey, or maybe sometimes you can see celebrities like Major Nelson walking around in your hub. Those things are the things that we want to enable in Bright Lodge. Mini games, chicken kicking, blacksmith, those things. But the most important thing about Bright Lodge is you're preparing to find a quest, right? So you kick off matchmaking. It's like, all right, I'm ready. Like I got my armor on. I want to play this character. Or if I'm a villain, like I have my set of creatures that I've already boosted up. I'm ready to go. Quick match. Find me a game. Or meet up with your friends in Bright Lodge and organize like what kind of game do you guys want to play. And that leads me to the next one, which is Quest. Quest is the heart of Fable Legends. It is where people will probably spend a lot more time in. Well, I guess it depends on the players, but we want people to play, to spend more time in here. in here is basically you're playing as a heroes, as one of the heroes, one of the 4 heroes, or you can play as the villain. As you know, if you start playing with 4 people and then one of them leave or one of them crash or one of them just rage quit or whatever, an AI will take over seamlessly. So you don't have to think about it. There's always 4 heroes and 1 villain. And this is also the place that you gain loot, achievements, etc. Right? Yeah. So we will probably more talk about the quest stuff. Drilling into how we make Fable Legends. It is built on Unreal Engine 4. And I'm sure you already heard the fact that right now, Epic is going to be releasing Unreal Engine 4 free, which is awesome, because it means that I can talk a lot more about Unreal Engine 4, on how we're using it, and how it's awesome for cross-device gaming. It takes a lot of effort to do debugging and stuff like that. We'll talk a lot. I will talk a little bit more about how Unreal Engine 4 is awesome in this particular case. It is an awesome engine throughout. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is very flexible. Our technical artists love it, so on and so forth. But for cross-device specific, there's one aspect of Unreal Engine 4 that I really like. Get to it. Now, the cross-device. What does the cross-device mean for us? To be specific, it is between Xbox One ERA, which is the exclusive allocation resource. I'm assuming you guys know about the ERA versus the SRA. As ERA is basically you have a box to make your game, and it's going to be, but this is what the most games ship with in Xbox One. You have a box of known quantity of resource that you're getting. And then you have your Windows 10 PC. In particular, Fable Legends is going to be shipped as a universal app platform. We are heavily relying on Xbox Live. We are using some of the technologies that, let's say, Titanfall uses. Let's talk a lot more about that. And we are also investing on our own Legends web service. What do we use it for? Good question. We'll get to it. All right, so let's just drill into the list. So, I'm going to take you to a journey. That's actually a pun joke because Fable journey. Okay, never mind. I'm going to take you to a journey on how do we even start, and then all the things that you should consider when you are thinking of making your next game to be cross-device enabled. The first one is configuring your title identification. And just like anything else, first you need to build your foundation first. First, when you're onboarding, you have to specify that hey, I have this awesome idea of this title. I want to start developing on it. I'm going to configure it. So the traditional way to set it up is that picture over there is that's basically Halo Spartan Assault. There's one flavor in Xbox One. There's one flavor in Xbox in the Windows Phone, the Xbox enabled stuff games for Windows Phone, and that's kind of traditionally what you would expect. There might Diablo 3, for instance. Xbox 360 and Xbox One, right? The expectation is if you go to your play profile, if you've ever played one of those 2 titles, you would see both titles. You would see 2 sets of achievements, and so on and so forth, right? They're just considered to be 2 different titles. Each title ID, when we talk about title ID, it's basically also talking about all the configurations associated with it. If you have been paying attention to some of the previous talks, like Ferdinand's talk or this morning's talk from BJ and Brian about how you make a game for Windows 10, you probably heard of something called configuration, service configuration. That's where you define all the session templates. That's where you define the matchmaking hoppers and stuff like that. So in the traditional configuration, each title configuration has its own service configuration, and it has a title ID associated with it. The new mode that they are enabling this year, which as far as I know, Fable Legends is the first one that uses this, is the single title ID and configuration. This is basically, think about it as a given single title ID and a single configuration. You can specify a lot of device types that can be attached, that can be using that title identification. And the last one is actually does not exist right now, multiple title IDs, but sharing the same service configuration. If you are interested in this, either talk to me or talk to someone in platform, because they are still trying to figure out if this is something that developers wants to use. But for information, this doesn't exist right now, the third one. Now, for Fable Legends, what do we want? For Fable Legends, we want one Fable Legends. We don't want one Fable Legend PC and one Fable Legend Xbox and things like that. We just want one Fable Legends. What does that mean, right? So if you play, oh, by the way, before I move on, Fable Legends is going to be free to play. I hope you heard of it. What does that mean is that when, well, it's free. I mean, like you download it to your Xbox One, you download it to your PC. But here's the thing. What we want is you play it in your Xbox One, and then you play it in your PC, and the expectation is that the progression of the user is just seamless. It just carries over, right? So that's one. The second expectation is the fact that when you play it in Xbox, and then you go to your PC, and then you see your play profile is just saying Fable Legends. It doesn't say Fable Legends Xbox. When you browse your friends, when you see what they're doing, hey guys, what are you up to these days? I mean, like, what are you playing right now, right? If you are familiar with the Xbox UI, you can actually see your friends, and then you can also see like it's pivoted differently by the activity that they're playing. What we want is we want 10 people playing Fable Legends. We don't want to see 5 people playing Fable Legends PC and 5 people playing Fable Legends Xbox, because that would be silly. When you see your friend's activity, sorry, I talked about that. Oh yeah, also, when you see your friend and he's playing Fable Legends, and he's actually joinable, you can just click on it and join his session without thinking about, ooh, is he playing, which device is he playing, right? I mean, like, you don't worry about that. You just like click on it and join. And moving on to the achievements. I don't know about you guys, but I like achievements. One story is like I was playing a game, and the game has a set of achievements. And one of the achievements is like kill whatever, like 1,000 enemies or something, right? So I started like, playing it, like I started getting into it, and then life happens, and I just like put it on the shelf for a few months. I was like, I'm gonna get back to it. I'm gonna finish that achievements. And then the Xbox One version came out. It's like, what? It's like better graphics and things like that, right? So I pick it up, and then it's a brand new achievements. Like I have to start over from zero. So that's not what we want. Like for Fable Legends, it's like if there's an achievement called kick 50 chickens, you kick the 50 chickens in PC or Xbox or PC and Xbox, and you got the achievements. That's basically what we want. So for us, should be obvious, we are using one title ID. We configure it to be one title ID. In the portal, there is a new way to, if from the title ID, you can actually start checking if it is for Xbox One. So it's checkboxes. So you specify Xbox One and or Windows 10 and or mobile. And all the things that we just discussed just work. I'm going to be mentioning a few times about 2015 multiplayer APIs. I'm also making the assumption, the fact that if you are not yet an Xbox developer, hopefully you would consider becoming an Xbox developer. Like the ID program is a wonderful program. At some point, you'll be able to start downloading our SDKs, white paper, portal, go have access to our portal and configure stuff, and you'll be able to see something like that where you can actually start onboarding, and you'll be able to specify which title ID is mapped to which device this. And the reason I mentioned 2015 multiplayer APIs is because, I guess that's a tease, because I will talk about it a little bit more. All right, second one. Now that you have configured your title ID, right? You have the title identification set up. Now you want to get the user token. The user token code for Xbox One and Windows 10 is actually very, very similar. That one, I'm not going to repeat the code, but basically that's the code. Now you might call, wait a minute, Raymond. You're missing something there. Isn't it like core application context, current user can actually return null? And you will be correct, because I got lazy and I didn't put the code to actually handle if the current user is actually null. So for those who are wondering, the second line is actually getting you the user who launched the game. Now in Xbox One, you can actually launch the game without actually having anyone sign in. So I mean, like, there is a white paper that actually describes how do you deal with that, assuming that you don't know who launched your game. In this particular case, you have to pop up a title callable UI to get, hey, who is really the active user, right? I mean, like, or like pop up a sign-in page and things like that. So there's a white paper that describes this, but this is just basically, my snippet is just explaining the fact that, like, it should be pretty straightforward to get the Xbox Live context. And Xbox Live context for a given user, that's basically on how you get a user token. Question is, why do you need a user token? Well, user token is basically, once you get a valid user token, you can call any live services. Kind of like the key to the kingdom of live. All right, so this is the Windows 10 version of the code. You're probably looking at like, wait a minute, there's no carrots. What's going on there? So one thing that I want to call out is the fact that, like, our friends in the platform has been working pretty hard to take all the developer feedback. And one of the developer feedback that they have is, hey, game developers like C++, game developers hates exceptions. Well, that's a pretty generic statement. But so this is actually the model that they're going with going forward. It's very standard C++. There's no exception, and it's awesome. If the question now becomes, hey, will there be a convergence between Xbox One APIs, service APIs, that basically wraps calls to live web services, and the Windows 10 SDK? The answer is yes. I don't know when, but there's going to be convergence. But it's going to look like this. Now, you might think that, like, why is he bolding that? And I don't remember any code to sign in on the Xbox One. You would also be correct, because the sign-in call in here actually abstracts out. Like, remember I told you, like, well, I mean, if there is no user, you have to do X, Y, and Z, which is all listed out in the white paper. That call, you pass up the UI dispatcher, and what that does is that abstracts out a lot of things for you. Like, for instance, oh, there is no user, there's no Microsoft account associated with this computer yet, or there is a Microsoft account, but there's no gamer tag, or you're launching Fable Legends on the separate machine where there is another Fable Legends running. We will talk about point of presence a little bit more, but that line, the reason, like, so sign in, pass up the UI context, UI dispatcher, it will do all kinds of things to do the heavy lifting for you to deal with all those corner cases. All right, so now you have configured your game. You have successfully getting the user token, which is, again, like I said, is the key to the live kingdom. Now let's make the game, right? In any kind of game that I can think of right now, there's going to be, at some point, you have to decide, how do you want to store the user progression? User progression is one way to call save game, right? But there's more to it. These are your options. At first, we have the Xbox Connected Storage, which you can think about it as like a cloud-based save game. It's a technology that's been around in 360, right? Yeah, 360. And then Xbox One clearly, improve it. And between Xbox One and Windows 10 PCs, it's just going to work. What I'm trying to say is that Windows 10 PC will have Xbox Connected Storage enabled also for your games. It's actually suitable for, it's cross-device enabled, assuming that you go with single title ID. As far as I know, if you have multiple title IDs, it will go to different buckets of the save game on the connected storage. So you might want to consider, if your title is going to be cross-device enabled and you want to use the connected storage, you want to consider using single title ID. Just like any save game, the game client is going to determine what to save, what kind of payload to save, and when to save it. The second option is you roll your own web service to store your data. What does that mean? It actually means whatever it is. Like, you spun up your own cloud web services in any provider of your choice, Azure and all the other cloud provider, and you build, you secure your communication between your client and your web service, and then you can store anything you want. When do you want to choose this? You want to choose this is when you don't want the game client to make a decision on what to save and when to save. But also, if you want the ability to augment any kind of data outside of the game client, like the game client is not even running and you want to be able to augment stuff to it or edit stuff or verify stuff, you want to go with this route. For us, for Fable Legends, we go with storing it in our own Legends web service. When we were looking at this, when we were considering the other option, we feel that we need a single point of authority for Fable Legends that goes beyond just the storage, but just a single point of authority, right? And the extra added security to it. So we store all kinds of these data in our web service. We store the player progressions, we store their customizations, we store the inventory, and we store the device configuration. So if you go to one PC, you start playing Fable Legends, and then you set your configurations the way you like it to be, and then you move on to another PC, we're storing all of those in our web service. So now that I have mentioned web service, let's talk about diagrams. The first box that you see over there is the Fable Legends game client. As you can probably tell, it's a game client that runs in Xbox One, and it runs on the Windows 10 PCs. The second component is actually hosted inside Xbox Live. So by no means and stretch of imagination, Xbox Live is only seven services. No, it's a lot more than that. That's just what's going to be relevant for the stock. But basically, like the blue colored one are our package, our binaries, the things that we produce, and the greens are the things that the platform guys provides. So that's the second component, is the Fable Legends game server that's hosted inside Xbox Cloud Compute. And then the third one is our own web service that also runs in Azure. Now, can you run it in, let's say, Amazon Web Service or Google? Sure. I mean, like, all of this thing will be applicable, but so happen to be we run it in Azure. So when the game client logs in, the first thing that it needs to do is that it needs to verify the fact that, like, hey, I can still play. So the first thing it will do is, after it gets the user token, like I mentioned from several slides ago, it will actually authenticate to Fable Legends web service. Fable Legends web service is going to take this authentication token, and it's going to say, all right, you are a valid Xbox user with all this information that's associated for you. I'm going to say, cool, get in. And here's all the player configuration that you have. Now, from the Xbox Cloud Compute, from the Fable Legends game server, which is running inside the Xbox Cloud Compute, it's more trusted because technically it's not running in the client space, but it's actually running on the server space, which we trust more. So it will be signing in with a private key. All right, so those are the three components. You will see those three components again in a little bit. So now let's get to the meat of multiplayer. One multiplayer scenario that we're very interested in is joinable multiplayer session. If you use the 2015 multiplayer APIs, if you have a session that if you have a multiplayer session, the only thing you need to do is just like set the activity, and what that does is that will set your activity to be that session. And essentially that makes that session to be joinable to all your friends. It is actually that simple. The more detail on how do you deal with multiplayer session directory services, you want to check out Ferdinand Schober's talk, the one before this, because he actually goes a lot more details into how do you deal with multiplayer session directories. All right, so what does that mean, right? I mean, like, and what's the big deal of multiplayer session and setting your session to be joinable? In this particular case, if you see the picture is kind of small, but if you set your session to be joinable, and I'm sorry, if you set your activity to be this session and the session to be joinable, what does that mean is that if your friends are browsing you, like your friends are seeing your activity, and regardless they use Xbox app or they use the Friends app from Xbox One, they will see that you're joinable, and the only thing they need to do is just click join, right? What that will do is that they will protocol activate your game, and the game will just work. And it's the same mechanism to listen to the fact that you just trying to join a session by protocol activation in both Windows 10 app and Xbox One. If you use the multiplayer 2015 APIs, you're guaranteed that the cross-device aspects of this is going to work. If you use the previous version, it's not going to work with cross-device. So you definitely want to check this out. If you have developed an Xbox One game before, check it out. If you are considering Xbox One and Windows 10 titles in the near future, you should also check it out. Also, from the in-game API perspective, you can also query your friends' joinable sessions. All right, let's talk about matchmaking. So you have created the session, it's joinable, but sometimes you just want to find a game. You just want to find the best session to join. And that is the concept of matchmaking. There are two options that you can do with matchmaking. One is you can use the existing Xbox Live Smart Match system. And the other one is you can roll your own matchmaking service. The concept of matchmaking service is just basically find me the best game for all this context, for all these circumstances, right? So Xbox Live Smart Match system, again, Ferdinand's talk goes a lot more deeper into it, but it is basically, this system has several components to it. There is the session directory that we just talked about. There is the matchmaking service, there is the reputation, and so on and so forth. And it's for us, it's actually good enough for us. Now the question becomes, when do you use the built-in smart match system from Live, or when do you have to roll your own? Essentially, the answer is, if you really want a lot more integration with your backend, you definitely want to roll your own. But my ask is, evaluate first what the Xbox Live Smart Match provides to you before you make that decision, because they have all kinds of abilities that may actually just work for you. And they also support service-to-service calls, which I will kind of describe in a bit. So for us, we're using Xbox Live Smart Match. That is just one sample of rules that we're using to find a game. This is not the final rule that we have, but the point about the rule is that everything is calculated on this is configured from the server side. So if we need to tweak some of the rules, you can just go to the portal and you can tweak this. For instance, that one is like, hey, find me a game, minimum 3 heroes, maximum 4 heroes. It has to have one human villain, and make sure that there is no conflict of the characters. Like if I'm playing a Shroud, I don't want to see another Shroud. All right, so let's talk about the matchmaking flow. At first, the first step is you create a session. First, you create a session. That's just the API to create a session. The next one is you pass up that session into the matchmaking service, and then you specify all kinds of values that your rule is going to be able to take. Now, at that point, the matchmaking service is going to do its own thing, and then eventually it's going to come back to you and say, hey, Raymond, here's the game that you should join. It's like, okay, cool. Like, oh, these are the people that I'm going to be playing with. Okay, what's next? The next, oh, by the way, if you see the Xbox Cloud Compute, there's no VM associated for my session at this point. When I'm ready to connect to all these guys, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Xbox Cloud Compute, and I'm going to say, all right, allocate me one game server. Xbox Cloud Compute is the technology that Titanfall uses, Forza uses for the Avatar. it's pretty cool. The concept is basically you have your own, you can configure an elastic game server for your title with the binaries that you control. So that is just the API to like ask the Xbox Cloud Compute to like, hey, allocate me one VM with these configurations, with this data center. And then when the game server is up in the Xbox Cloud Compute, Fable Legends game client is going to connect to the game server over UDP, secure UDP. And then from that point on, the game server inside that Xbox Cloud Compute is going to take over like background matchmaking and is going to run the host. Basically, that becomes the host, and the clients are just becomes clients, right? For instance, you have 5-player and then one drops out. The game server is going to take care of like, all right, I'm going to find one more guy or girl. All right, so I kind of alluded to this. The next one is like, how do you configure the multiplayer host? We looked at several options when we started looking into this. We actually, at some point, Fable Legends is running peer-to-peer. And we decided against it. What we learned is that, A, we don't want to create an unexpected, unfair advantage. Unexpected is because, for the most part, you don't really know if you're the host or not if you're running peer-to-peer. There is a heuristic to pick which client is actually running as the host, right? I mean, the best processing power, the best network connectivity, and so on and so forth. But we feel that like it's just unfair. It can create situations where it's just going to be unfair. So we scrap that. And also, our goal is just to have a better multiplayer experience. Like, for instance, like I want to play with VJ, right? And then, hey VJ, let's play. And then suddenly, like, nope, we cannot play. Like, what's going on? And then, like, after like an hour of searching in the internet, we found out that both of our router configuration is not strict, right? I mean, like, that would suck. I mean, like, it means that we cannot play, or our gameplay is gonna be detrimental. So that's why we go with this model of running our dedicated server in a secure location, which in this particular case is the Xbox Cloud Compute. Things that we calculate on the game server, we run all the simulation, we run the physics, we run the damage calculation, all the loots, rewards, experience, achievements, we actually run it in the server. So before I move on, I just want to call out, all right, this guy. I heard somebody asking earlier today, like, how do you do a service-to-service call? Because essentially, like, the game server, at that point, is going to start talking to matchmaking and multiplayer session directory on behalf of these game clients. So there is a wonderful white paper that describes how do you do that. It's basically, the authentication is using certificate. So you can definitely get a certificate so that as long as you can prove that your game server is valid and is going to be in a secure location, you can get a certificate. And then using that certificate, business partner certificate, you can call to live services. The next one is voice chat. There's going to be a solution from a platform that will enable you to do a voice chat between your games in Xbox One and in Windows 10. It's coming later this year. So currently we're using our own internal solution until that solution from the platform is available later this year. And the last one is point of presence. Point of presence is all about, okay, so I play Fable Legends, I start Fable Legends in one machine, or one Xbox, or one Windows 10. Will I allow Fable Legends to be launched in another machine on my account? And here are some of the options. The default one is basically there is a title level single point of presence. Xbox One is a device level single point of presence. What that means is that you go on Xbox One, you sign in with your gamer tag, and then you go to another Xbox One, you sign in with also the same gamer tag, and you will kick out the one before that. You will sign them off. But between Xbox One and Windows 10, from the platform perspective, there's going to be a title level single point of presence. You can request an exception if you really, really want a multiple point of presence, but there are a lot of restrictions to it. Like, for instance, you cannot use multiplayer session directories or the joinable sessions if you go with this mode. So for us, we just use the default title level single point of presence. Now, the question becomes, how do we know if I'm, like me as a game, I'm running, and then suddenly I got kicked out because of single point of presence? It just boils down to the fact that, like, I'm going to be suspended. And you can be suspended by a lot of things. One of them is single point of presence. So as a good practice, you wanna clear the activity, the multiplayer activity. You wanna disable the multiplayer subscriptions and things like that. Those are all the multiplayer 2015 APIs. Again, like I said, so it has all kinds of good documentations in the portal about that. All right, so I'm gonna have a demo in a bit, but basically the conclusion is we are using single title ID. As a games as a service, we need to have our own secure point of authority outside of the game, which is why we have our own Legends web service. We rely on Legends web server running in a secure environment, which in this case, the Xbox Cloud Compute. We really are keen on the fact that it's elastic, and that's great for us. We use 2015 multiplayer APIs to enable a lot of the things that just works, like, for instance, I'm playing in my PC, and then I send an invite to my friend, and you don't really care if he's in PC or in Xbox. He will just get the toast of whatever device that he's playing right now, and he click on the toast, and they will protocol activate the game, and voila, he's in your session. We are excited about the upcoming cross-device voice chat that's coming from platform, and we rely on the title level single point of presence to solve a lot of the corner case headaches. So what's next? What I think should be next is that you guys should really consider a cross-device gaming for your next game, because you can really do it right now. And it would be great if we can share our findings, because we're not done yet with Fable Legends. We are still building the game. So let's share our findings, because that will be awesome. With that, I'm going to show you a demo. All right, so what do we have right now? So I have the Fable Legends running as a universal app. It's installed already, and I started earlier. So right now we're in the title screen, and it's been sitting there for a while. And what you're seeing is that in the very beginning, what it will do is that it will authenticate to Xbox Live and getting that user token. What does user token actually looks like? User token actually looks something like this. If we drill down to raw, this string right here is basically the user token. This authorization, XBL 3.0. All right, so it already authenticates with Xbox Live, already get a valid token, and then I turn around and go to the profile service. Again, like, we're just looking at under the cover. If you're using the API, you don't really have to worry about this, but if you are hardcore, of course, you can write your own web service calls. In this particular case, the first call that I make after I get that user token is I fetch my profile. And this is the gamer tag for this user, the user that's associated with this account. And then I'm getting his profile, so I get his gamer tags and all those good stuff. And then I just leave it on. I mean, like, and what it does is that behind the scene, if you're using the service APIs, it's going to start pinging the user presence to tell them like, hey, by the way, yeah, I'm still playing. You know, like the game is still running. So that's why you see all those calls to the presence, like these. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go start the game. By the way, this is a development build, so you know, frame rates and things like that, I have to turn off some of the particles effects. And I will talk about how you can actually see our game in here in Xbox booth in a little bit. But anyway, we're in the game right now. The first thing that it does is that it will actually, upon loading to the game, it will fetch, hey, give me all my friends, and tell me if they're actually playing Fable Legends. So the two calls that you will see in here is this one is the hitting the profile service and saying that like, hey, give me all my friends, and these are all the friends that this dev account has. The next call is actually going to the user presence and saying that like, hey, out of all my friends, tell me what are they doing, what kind of game they're playing. Are they playing Fable Legends? Right, so like this guy, like Fable Legends closed beta. And you can see from the title ID. So those are just the calls to the presence. Let's do something a little bit more fun. I'm going to hit quick play. This is basically, I'm going to be matchmaking right now. All right, matchmaking. So first thing that we discussed earlier is that the first thing that we do in the matchmaking is that we would hit the matchmaking service, multiplayer service directory and create a match session. So this is the call to the session directory. Oh, no. I'm going to stop matchmaking. All right, so the first call is like go to the session directory and create me a match session. The next one is I'm going to go to the matchmaking service, and I'm going to specify that, oh, I'm playing as Winter, and this is my game version to make sure that I'm only matched with the people with my game version. I'm a heroes, and so on and so forth. And those values are going to be used in the matchmaking hopper to actually find me the best game. So that's basically a quick demo of Fable Legends running in the UAP, Universal App Platform in Windows 10, and it's actually calling live. Right. So with that, see you in Albion. Sign up in our closed beta. We have closed beta right now going on for our Xbox One and also for PC. The PC closed beta is actually coming later. We haven't announced the date yet, but it is coming. So definitely sign up for it. And check out our booth in the South Hall Expo in 802, because that actually has the full setup of PC Fable Legends and Xbox Fable Legends playing together, and you can actually play a full level on it. So check it out. And the cape, if you win as a villain, you get the villain cape, and if you win as a hero, you can get the hero cape, this is the hero cape. So that's the whole thing about the cape. Or you can get a chicken head. That's also an option. Chicken head is awesome. And questions? Any questions? Yep. Yeah, feel free to step to the mic.
I was just wondering if there's any discrepancy with like input, like keyboard and mouse versus a controller, whether one side has more of an advantage over the other.
So that is actually a great question. The question becomes, it's actually a bigger question than that. Like, how do you balance an asymmetrical game in the first place, right? So yes, mouse and keyboard and gamepad difference, that is one aspect of it. But there's like, the 4 versus 1 aspect of it, which is actually kind of large. And kind of like the answer for it is that we will, as long as we have the ability to learn from what's going on, like what is the win ratio and all the wonderful telemetry data that we have, and we can adjust things accordingly of like, what is the damage that this creature does and things like that on the fly, which is why the single point of authority is really important, because that's where the web service is very key, because web service is the one that holds all those information, and all the game clients, the game server, always fetches the last dynamic configuration from the web service. So anyway, so that's one answer. The other answer is we design it first in the gamepad, surprisingly. So what does that mean is that from the game design perspective, like, compare it with like StarCraft, for instance. Like StarCraft, you select individual units. You can select a lot of units, and then you can tell those units to actually go to point A to point B, right? In Fable Legends, we actually do several things that's kind of going differently. Like, so you control squads as a villain. You don't control an individual units. The other one is we break it down into waves, and every wave there can be up to 4 squads of creatures. So what does that mean is that for gamepad, it's actually very easy to control because each of them is corresponding to the face button. If you are skeptical about it, come to our booth and play as a villain with gamepad.
So early on, you mentioned the different setups they had for IDs and configurations, and we're talking about the default was many. You're doing 1-1.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, and you mentioned that there was a many-1.
Yes.
I'm a little curious. You said talk, but I'm a little curious just in general. Like, what would even be a setup that would use that? Would it be something like having the heroes and the villains be 2 different game IDs, and so you'd be playing like one Hero Legends, Fable Legends heroes and Fable Legends villains as 2 different games, but sharing the same thing? I'm wondering, like, how would that even work?
Right. So normally the usage is for your PC game, you're using one title ID, and then for your Xbox game, you're using another title ID. And assuming that you assuming that you actually have a really good reason to go with that, but you want to share the same configuration. For instance, you want them to join the same session, or you want them to use the same matchmaking rules. That is more like the scenario that most people would probably think about. To be fair, the whole single title ID that's mapped to multiple device types just came online a couple of maybe like a month or 2 months ago. So we were actually using that configuration, the other configuration, the one that's like multiple title IDs with multiple configurations. But anyway, so talk to me a little bit more about that, and if anyone is interested about that, we can offline it. But yeah.
So you talked about obviously you've got the cross Windows 10 Xbox gameplay. Is there much of an active push from Microsoft to encourage developers to build games with cross-platform gameplay, or is it just do what you want? And it's always something I've been interested in. So
there's definitely a desire from Microsoft to go to that route, especially the whole thing about convergence, right? The whole thing about like one core is the concept that they have, which is like basically you have one set of code that you can compile it, one set of code, you compile it, and that basically like one form factor to run in a mobile and one form factor to run in a PC and things like that. So they're definitely eyeing convergence, and what we're doing right now is that we're testing the ground to make sure that, and working out all the kinks. But that's definitely the route that Microsoft wants to go. Cool. All right. Thank you so much for coming, guys.